I didn't expect that the whole connection between the two of them was going to be seemingly more on Ijuna's side, because from the chapter it looks like she's got Stockholm syndrome. At least that's what it's being kind of like assessed by Shura. Not Shura. Laguna, and I don't know. I feel like that's a very logical solution to that kind of question. But I feel like Ijuna is just kind of crazy. Like seeing some of the looks in her face. I feel like she's just actually a little bit, a little bit tilted in the head. But the fight actually was actually pretty good. I like when you have simple match dynamics like this. Like, it's cool when you get to like the crazier people with like OP abilities and whatnot. But when you have people that are way more kind of like way more grounded in like what they can do, it can give more of a like a simple yet really cool action scene. Like Laguna's just sending his waves around, just trying to crash like big bodies of water at her, and she's blocking it with her strings. She's sending the strings directly through them. Obviously, they're like she says they're steeled like with her ether, so they're pretty much just piercing attacks at that point. They're just drilling, not I guess drilling, but more of just piercing right through his waves and stabbing directly into him. The thing actually I really liked about her like style of attack wasn't just like how she was generally using her ether gear. I like when she stabbed it into Laguna and then twisted it and then like put stitches into him. I thought that was a really cool just looking attack. I think that would look really sick visually. But yeah, Laguna's just trying to like figure out obviously like what happened to her, what exactly went down that made her like this, because the Empire killed her father, killed multiple members of Oasis, and even Laguna, when she's like, oh, you left too, but he's like, oh, I left to try and find some power capable of taking Nero down. Like, I was fine. Like, he was perfectly fine just getting his hands as deep in the mud and whatnot in order to get that victory in the end. Like, he didn't really care what, like, level of lows he had to stoop down to in order to take down Nero. Because he even mentions that the Oasis is all talk. They're not nearly enough action. They don't really do enough to meet up to what Laguna wanted. Like, he just wasn't getting results at the same degree that he was hoping to get out of everything in order to actually take down Nero and the Empire and whatnot. Whereas when he went to Draken Joe, I actually would really love to hear like Mishima's like reasoning of like if Draken Joe went to battle with Nero. Obviously, Nero has the forces in terms of numbers, but Draken Joe's crew just seemed stronger, and on top of that, they just seemed generally way more combat orientated. Because even like the lower ones, when you get to like, was it Daichi? Like he seemed somewhat tough. His whole thing was more on torture. But when you got to like, was it Diego, Seth, you had Maria, obviously you had like Fi, who can just snipe people from miles away. Laguna obviously is strong. Like, you had people that were definitely capable. And the only one I could definitely see, like, the obvious gap, like, just in... I mean, you can just look at the pages and look at, like, recently fighting Sylph versus Lyra. Because, like, Sylph won, but that was after she got Overdrive, which she didn't have at the time. Draken Joe, though, is just the biggest danger, like, putting him out there. I feel like Draken Joe would just be on a warpath. Everyone that would get in his way the second he touches down on planet would just get alchemied. And so far, Shura is cool. I like Shura. He's definitely powerful, but I don't think whatsoever that he could fight Draken Joe, especially Draken Joe unnerfed. Nero is obviously the big question mark. We'll see when we actually get back to that fight. But the stuff with Laguna and Ijuna was fine. I liked the general conversation between them. The thing that was funny to me is like there's some people like freaking out over Ijuna's whole response of like how she was like tortured and humiliated by Shura and like done all this stuff, and eventually she seemed to taking I don't know if she liked it at the time, but she's like thinking back to it and she's like blushing and seemingly like has like an enjoyed look on her face. But it was the Stockholm syndrome thing from Laguna when he's like saying how, and she's like, oh well, I realized how lonely he was and how like nobody ever loved him, and she just developed an affection for him. I personally think that she just is a little crazy. Stockholm syndrome can easily, like, it's the most likely answer, but I feel like she is also a little crazy. But like, it was funny when people were like being like, can't believe Mishima would do this with this character. I'm like, that she's a villain, and it's like, Oh, what a surprise. The girl who's, like, linked up with a super crazy villain dude is also a pretty crazy villain person. Like we saw not Laguna, I'm messing up names today. We saw Shura perfectly fine without a change in any form of personality that would show any form of morality or anything, like just murdering people for little to no reason. So I feel like anybody could have guessed that, yeah, Ijuna had to be pretty crazy in order to be okay with, like, hanging out with him and stuff. Like, the only other way would be if she was so afraid of, like, getting executed or something. I don't really know, because even, like, some of the stuff, Mishima definitely, like, added that whole extra part just to kind of go in a little bit of, like, oh, wow. When, Ijuna's like, yeah, he put a bomb in my ass. And I was just like, oh, shit. That's, unfortunate, but I mean, like, you know, I mean, like, do what you do. I mean, I guess, I mean, they got a mutual relationship at this point, so, I don't know. Either way, like, right now, I'm so curious as to what Mishima has planned for Shura and Ijuna, because usually when you go into, like, villain groups, especially in Shonen, like, this, I mean, even more especially Mishima, I always expect there to be at least one character in there to become an ally. They don't have to join, like, the main cast, but become kind of like an ally. And, like, I know it's a really common thing in Shonen, and Mishima usually has one in there. Mishima usually has one in the villain groups that is going to become an ally to a degree. Not always. I mean, you look at, like, Tartaros and stuff. I mean, unless you count Minerva, but not the same thing. Shura, I don't see being that. Like, if anybody out of the Oceans was going to become, like, either a member of the main cast or a new ally, it'd probably be, like, Lyra or someone. Whereas, like, Shura and Ijuna, I feel like, are too far gone, and there's no redemption arc for them. I did really like this panel, though. And it's not, obviously, like, Witch in just tatters and just, like, broken down. I really like the angle that Mishima went with Shura and the look on his face. I thought he looked really cool in this panel. One thing I do have to mention, people need to remember, we have established in Eden Zero that the androids and the machines are, like, unless you destroy their core, they're not actually dead. We do not know if Witch is actually dead or if she's just so heavily damaged that she's not functioning properly right now. If she is a machine, like, this could be the death. Like, Mishima hasn't done any crazy deaths yet in Eden Zero. And it's not the same thing as, like, a large-scale death, because Witch is cool, but, like, Witch hasn't had, like, a lot of... Like, she hasn't had a lot of general, like, kind of, like, growth and screen time. She's mostly just been along. She would be an unfortunate character to die, but it wouldn't be, like, as, like, crazy. Like, one of those crazy, big, impactful, like, story-turning deaths that were just out of nowhere. Like, a lot of people believe that this was going to happen, but I personally, and I feel like a lot of people as well, don't believe that she's dead yet. Unless we get confirmation her core is destroyed, then there's no reason to assume she's dead. Because no matter the damage, as long as the core is there, they can fix her up her body or put her core into a new body. But Shiki's looking pissed. Shiki's about to enter a rage state. I wonder if we're going to get any progressed state of his overdrive, or if Shiki's going to go right into overdrive the moment we get to this. Because logically speaking, if... Actually, well, I'll add it one side. Logically speaking, if Shiki went into overdrive, or at least, like, went into that pseudo kind of overdrive with the ether lines, leaving the body and stuff, and just kind of, like, attacked Shura and brought Shura out of the area, Rebecca and Pino and HappyBot can take Witch and take her back to the ship to get healed. Or I don't know if Rebecca could do it. I feel like she's already used her cat leaper today. Like, what, 2 times? I don't know what the cooldown is. I don't think was it ever stated to be exactly 1 day or what? Because it'd be like, what if she ends up reversing time like a handful of seconds and is able to get here right before they end up doing it? Or maybe he'll go and try and destroy her core, and that's when she tries to use it again. I could see something like that happening. Like, Mishima uses that situation to kind of, like, cheat out, just to kind of, like, put that death there, but cheat out Rebecca having, like, a free redone of, like, a situation with her cat leaper. Because obviously something like that you got to take out of scenarios and situations. Yeah, I didn't expect we were gonna get the Shura and Witch stuff at the end of the chapter. I thought this was gonna be fully focused on Laguna and Ijuna. I really want to see more of that fight. 'Cause I actually really like the matchup, like the power matchup when we were seeing the two of them fight. Obviously, she is at an advantage clearly when it comes to her powers. Like he can do his waves and stuff, but she just pierces right through it. A lot of people believe that she's gonna end, or not she. Like we're gonna see Overdrive Laguna. I would personally not like Overdrive Laguna. I mentioned before, I would rather people that haven't shown that ether line progression to get that like in between form. But the fact that Sylph has it, and I know that Laguna wasn't like the same thing, kind of like direct on as much training, like gonna be there doing everything the same as the Eden Zero crew, but I feel like if somebody that I personally would believe is weaker than him, at least how it used to be, that he would probably have it. Because I feel like if Sylph has it, then he's going to have it. It's kind of like when Wise ended up getting Overdrive. I was like, well, there's no way that Jin doesn't have it. Like, Homura was kind of like the iffy area, because if I had to gauge the strength out of, like, the Eden Zero Cats, like, members, like, primarily, like, you obviously put, like, Shiki, Jin, and then Homura. I could see like Jin and Homura being neck and neck in a lot of cases. Not like one for one, but I could see areas where like Homura might pull through for a little bit before Jin comes up or something or other, and that, you know, vice versa. Either way, solid chapter. I'm hoping we get more focus on what's going to happen to Shiki following this whole scene, and if we're going to get confirmation on Witch's core, because that's, you know, that's the big deciding factor on, is she alive? Is she dead? What's going to happen to her character? Is she going to get murked here? Who knows? It's going to depend. I personally think that she's not dead. My guess is that she's not dead, but this is going to be a scene and scenario to show like Shiki's unhinged side, like when we saw with the League. Because the difference between Shiki, Haru, and Natsu is Shiki's rage is way more unhinged. Because like, when you saw Haru's like rage state when he was just super furious, for the people who haven't read Raid Master, it was way more calm and focused. It was just this dead-eyed, ready to kill his opponent kind of rage. Natsu's is like a wildfire. He's rampaging and he's going all over the place. Shiki's rage is just this unhinged kind of like animalistic kind of nature. And it's because of Shiki's, the way that he grew up, obviously not having people around him, and the way he's really awkward, is his, I feel like his rage is just, like I said, super unchecked. It's very, like, raw in how he's going to do it. It's going to be like a wild animal. That's how I at least believe it's going to go. I see Shiki killing Shura at this point. Like, before I could see Shiki just defeating him, I feel like Shiki is going to end up, like, having, like, a step too far moment and end up killing like Shura in like almost like an execution style way. I could easily see it happening here, or some way that just is like kind of would be like unnerving if you were like there, because just seeing Shiki act not like how he is. But like Haru and Natsu killed people, but both of them weren't like, they weren't out here just like putting people down that they just didn't like. But I feel like the difference between them is Haru had way more of like a good head on his shoulders. Obviously, like his sister taught him a lot of good lessons. He's definitely the smartest out of the three of them. And like Natsu is at his core like a nice person. He is factually like a kind guy, and he only likes to kill people. I didn't say kill people. He's only ready to kill people who are outright horrible and like unsalvageable and just dangerous to everyone around them and whatnot. Whereas I feel like Shiki's is going to be way more personal, because Shiki doesn't have he's not aligned to any real side. Like Haru was way more of a hero. Obviously, like his story is a hero's journey kind of style. The Fairy Tail Guild is inherently good, but they're out for themselves. I always say Natsu is like an anti-villain. Sorry, not an anti-villain. He's like a softcore anti-hero. He's not gonna go around murdering everybody, but he's fully ready to throw hands at anybody that you know, regardless of side, if they show any aggression or disrespect towards the guild. Whereas like Shiki, because he's an Eden Zero, they are good, but I think that they're more aligned with just specifically the Eden Zero. But whereas like the Fairy Tail Guild was still a legal guild where they had issues with the government and stuff and the council, whereas the Eden Zero is like they are effectively like a criminal group in some ways, and they're going to be against a lot more people that in general, because they're going to have, you know, this other whole third faction besides, well, I guess third, because you're going to have all these other mini factions with like the other members of the Galactica and then maybe any other enemy crews out there. But they're just going to have more general enemies and less people that they like, less casual going around. They're going to have more people that are a threat to them on a regular basis than like the other two groups. So I can see Shiki seeing it more of kind of like, he's not gonna have as much of that kind of aligned morality between you know, between like the idea of humanity or even like regular laws. It's like Natsu was like a criminal, but he for the most part still, like, I wouldn't say criminal, he's a troublemaker, but for the most part he wasn't trying to get in trouble with the council. He would like break laws and stuff without realizing it, and obviously like get grilled for it. Whereas like Shiki and Ko, I feel like they're just gonna be kind of doing their own thing for a lot of it. But anyway, yeah, I can see Shiki killing Shura after this. I really can. Like when we saw him against the Liga, it looked like he would have just beaten him to death if Pino didn't intervene. So I could definitely see that happening with Shura, or some form of like really cool scene where it's like Shura's hanging over the edge and Shiki maybe like grabs him, and you have like some really cool moment where like you know, one of them lets go and has like this really cool end, or maybe Shiki lets him go. I think that would be really cool. Like maybe Shiki wants to help him, but Shura just shows that he's still like a lunatic. Shiki just lets him go to free fall and die. I can see something like that. That would be really dramatic and really cool. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but for the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But on that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.